Hello, everyone. This is Group C with Erin, Ailie, Cyrus, Nina, Mariam, and Martin. And today we will walk you through our guide that we created for showing us tool and our analysis. And firstly, we will walk you through the introduction of the topic, then our research questions and hypotheses, and then we will go directly to the analysis and what we did in detail. So to start with, in democratic countries, citizens receive information about politics from many different sources, including news media, political leaders themselves. Considering the media's power of agenda setting and framing of political issues, how much media discourse actually represents and impacts citizen views has become a hot topic of debate in political science. So politicians and the media also don't necessarily frame salient political issues in the same way, because they not only represent public opinions, but also construct such opinions. They set the political agenda and shape what we consider important, salient, and urgent. So, for example, some topics like immigration become much more present in public discourse right before elections as a consequence of political agendas and media salience. Does it truly represent the public's genuine worries, or is it also influenced by political electorate interest? So, rather than relying on our own interpretations, we want to build a tool that better allows us to tackle such questions, systematically comparing government communication and media coverage over time, and allowing us to hypothesize on how these elements relate to political circumstances like electoral cycles, political scandals, or important events. So our README outlines our research questions and hypotheses, but broadly we're asking, how do the political discourse of Japanese prime minister speeches and the Japan Times compare? Which issues receive the most attention, and how does the tone differ between the two? And can data science methods be useful for further analysis on political communication? You can also see other questions in the guide. And what we expect is we expect government speeches and media coverage to prioritize different issues because they serve different purposes. And we also expect data science methods to identify differences in tone while revealing some of the challenges of analyzing complex political language. So how did we do this? First, we began by obtaining and scraping the data from two different data sets. The first is the University of Tokyo's World and Japan database, which contains Japanese prime minister speeches. Since this is a set of speeches in text form, we did web scraping in order to make it readable in the Python file. The second is a Kaggle dataset containing the Japan Times articles from 2005 to 2021, and this was already in a nice CSV file, so we simply edit the data in there. Our next step is choosing the keywords. So to analyze which topics are being discussed in the media and in speeches, we use LLM agent Olama, asking it the common phrase. What are 10 political single-word, simple keywords closely associated with Japan's category strategy in English? Please include short explanations for why each were chosen, included capital and lowercase, as well as different English spelling to account for specific English translations, including differences with UK English versus American English. So the words we picked are defense, the economy, nuclear policy, and inflation. With these keywords, we can see frequency graphs, time series, visualizations, regressions, and word clouds to compare issue salience across the two datasets.
So now with this keywords database, we are going to carry out the analysis of our speeches and news articles to then create graphs, time series visualizations, regressions, word clouds, and so on. So we're going to use our keywords. And the first thing is apply them to speeches by the Japanese prime ministers. So this is the frequency of our keyword categories, as you can see. And then we can also use Spacy to find which phrases are the most common, which combination of different words are the most common. And in this case, it would be the self-defense forces. We can see this in this bar chart and in this word cloud. So, secondly, we're going to do the same thing with the Japan Times. As with speeches, we will use Spacy to look at the phrases that appear the most frequently. Again, this is the number of articles per month. We see there's a sudden drop in 2004. And again, the most common combination of words is the United States. And this is the word cloud. So for the keyword analysis, we do the same thing as before. We normalize the values so that the results are not skewed in favor of the years which have more articles in general. So we see defense, economy, nuclear, and immigration. And here are the four of them together. And now we're going to see the graphs. After doing the separate analysis of keywords appearing in political speeches and in news articles, we want to see if there's any correlation between them. Is a greater frequency of a specific concept in political speeches related to a similar frequency in news articles? We will use scatter plots to see this. We plot each point representing the keyword category's frequency in the two databases in a given year, and we add a regression line. If there is any positive relationship, we should see an upward sloping regression line, and it's not the case, and we think this is because of the quality of the database, because we only have 300 speeches by Japanese Prime Minister, so this might be why this correlation is not that clear. So going down now. Yeah, this is the function we created to graph this information applied to Japan's data. You can see it here. And now, with this tool and with everything we have seen, we can actually carry out like political analysis, try to answer political questions, right? So using this timeline, we have also created that includes important events and election cycles, and our keyword graphs. So this is the prime ministerial speeches, and this is the news articles. We carried out a small analysis. We don't have time to go through in this video, but just as an example, we find that nuclear discourse, for example, spikes after the Fukushima disaster, or immigration increases its presence in the media since 2018, but not so much in prime ministerial speeches. And we wonder if this points towards our first hypothesis that news media and politicians can pursue different priorities. Again, we must point out that these results have been influenced by the quality of our databases, and we will see how in the case of the United States later, a better database lets us see clearer conclusions.
So to extend the Japan analysis, we conducted sentiment analysis using OLAMA, and that was introduced in week 10 of the course. So rather than just measuring how many keywords appeared, we wanted to see what the sentiment was surrounding them. So of course, this was more of an experimental extension of the project with many possible improvements. So we firstly imported the same data sets used Llama 3.2 running locally on our computers to analyze articles and prime minister speeches containing our selected keywords. We then prompted the model to assign a sentiment score from -2, which was strongly negative, to +2, and to identify the dominant policy frame and provide a key sentence justifying the classification. And this, of course, can be better seen in our sentiment analysis notebook. We then averaged the sentiment scores across each topic. In the actual notebook, we also prompted OLAMA to share why that score was given. Overall, the news articles tended to have a more negative tone, as you can see in this graph here, while the Prime Minister's speeches were consistently more positive. This probably reflects the differences in communication goals. The government's speeches emphasize reassurance from leadership, whereas news reporting focuses more on problems and criticism. Now and you can see the scores here as well. Now let's apply these findings to another data set, the United States. We tested whether our framework could be applied to another country. We used the New York Times data together with the State of the Union speeches, presidential speeches from the Comparative Agendas project. So we, this time, had a clean and structured data set already. Using the same workflow, we found a stronger correlation as first seen in our regression analysis than in the Japan analysis. And then once again, we did the same thing where we had the timeline showing major events and election cycles. And then we also, once again, did the same keyword category over time graph as well in both the speeches as well as the news articles. So we can see here that there's similar spikes as seen in the Japan case. Now let's go over to our conclusion. Overall, this project allowed us to apply text analysis and visualization techniques from the course to compare political topics across different forms of communications. One of our biggest lessons was that finding a clean and accessible data set is just as important as the analysis itself. We initially planned to use Japanese political party manifestos, but web scraping was quite unreliable because the text was vertical and there were many images. This forced us to switch data sets kind of at the last minute and pivot to a different direction of prime minister speeches. Meanwhile, when working with the US, which already had a cleaned up CSV folder, we had a much easier time interpreting and analyzing the data. Moreover, we see the impact of having a Japanese we also see the impact of having a Japanese speech database that was too small. We had 500 speeches as opposed to 36,000 news articles, and this could have impacted the correlation and quality of our analysis. When it comes to AI-based sentiment analysis, this also has limitations, particularly when interpreting political language, where nuance is often difficult for language models to capture. We should have prompted that. We can therefore think about how we could have prompted the LLM differently. Finally, we showed that the same analytical framework that we use for Japan could be successfully applied to the United States, suggesting that it can also be adapted for future comparative policy research as well. In fact, because the data for the US was available, we also saw cleaner results there. At the end, working as a team of 6 also highlighted the importance of clear file organization and naming conventions when collaborating on this shared database. And we hope that through this guide, we are able to use future data sets to compare in other projects as well. Thank you.